there are just a few housekeeping things that I would like to do on the front end, because I would like to know who I'm talking with because I see your names, but who are you? Who are you? So you could let me know just a couple of things. Where are you located? And what is your current vocation and or ministry context right now? We could just popcorn it around. As soon as you finish, just pick somebody else.
At the risk of, well, I will repeat what I just said. I did not realize we were doing it in the introduction. So my name is Elijah Noel. You see my name there. I am a member of Emmanuel Episcopal Church. For those of you that are outside of the Memphis area, Emmanuel is an historically Black Episcopal congregation that will soon be merging with four other congregations to form a new church, the Episcopal congregation in the Memphis area. You asked about vocation. I am a non-clergy. I have been a practicing attorney for over 50 years here in the Memphis area.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Someone else, quickly.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Nicole Robertson. I currently reside in Indianapolis, Indiana. I am the director of our clinical mental health counseling program here at Christian Theological Seminary. And I am also an ordained minister in the Baptist Church faith tradition, along with training other professionals in the counseling field. Happy to be here.
Thank you, Nicole.
My name is Reverend Dr. Milo Lumpkin. I currently serve in the United Methodist Church in the Tennessee Western Kentucky Annual Conference. I pastor two churches here in Tennessee, but I also serve as a delegate for MICA, and also I serve on their Transformational Justice Task Force, as well as I am a founder and executive director of my own nonprofit called Restored Citizens, for those who are justice impacted. That's who I am.
Nice. Dr. Lumpkin, I think we've met before. If not, you got a really good doppelganger out there somewhere.
Oh, absolutely. I met you before, brother. Yeah.
Okay, I thought so. I think we were at, I can't
Executive
remember.
clergy and executive director.
There
Yeah.
you go. There you
Yes.
go. All right. Is there anybody else that wants to share? I don't want to force you to do it, but it would just be helpful.
I'll go. This is
Thank you.
Dr. Christine, the other Dr. Lumpkin here. That is my husband. I am a adult geriatric primary care nurse practitioner. We reside in Olive Branch, Mississippi, and glad to be here. Thank you.
Sounds good. Dr. Harrington, how you doing, my man?
Dr. Mack, all is well, man. Good to see you. Good to see you today, and
Thank you.
looking forward to receiving from you. I'm Reverend Dr. Darrell Harrington, the pastor of the historic New Sardis Baptist Church here in Memphis, Tennessee. Also, the CEO of Neshoba Community Resource Center, and good to be here today.
Thank you. Anybody else before we move on? All right, sounds good. I am Dr. Mark McNeil. I am the senior pastor of the Early Grove Baptist Church in Memphis, Tennessee, situated in the Binghamton community, the historic Binghamton community. I have had the pleasure of serving there. Next month will make 4 years. Moved to Memphis from Charlotte, North Carolina. I am originally from Cleveland, Ohio, and I got ties almost everywhere, all around Ohio, all through Virginia. I did my seminary work at the Samuel DeWitt Proctor School of Theology at Virginia Union University. I went on to get my DMin from Colgate Rochester Crozer Divinity School, where I'm pretty sure almost everybody here knows my mentor, Dr. Marvin McMickle. I am now here in Memphis, and I am enjoying it. And upon meeting Dr. Andre Johnson, who kind of pushed me and helped me get into this teaching space, I was able to be adjunct professor at Memphis Theological Seminary for its last semester. We thought we was going to take this program and just run it. And man, we got that faithful email that day, and it was over. It was nothing nobody could do. They told everybody too late. It just kind of is what it is. But yeah, that's just kind of where we are and where I am now. I'm a husband. I am a father, and listen, I enjoy golf. I enjoy sports. I enjoy life, and I just make the best out of whatever my hand has been dealt at the moment. What I want to share with you guys is just a little bit of what I would consider my framework to be. I am going to share my screen here now. Let's see, press start. There we go. Can everybody see what's on the screen? Okay, perfect. So, in addition to what I am also a part of, I created an LLC based out of some information that I had learned along the way. I am a certified community organizer with the Gamaliel Network. I'm pretty sure if you were on earlier, you heard from Christine. Dr. Lumpkin is mentioned part of it earlier. There's an organization here in Memphis called MICA. The Gamaliel Network spans literally across the country, and I was the first statewide organizer for the state of Tennessee. In that process, I had to become certified as a community organizer. The Gamaliel Network is the same organization that former President Barack Obama was certified as a community organizer with back in the late 80s. I believe there's a white paper out there somewhere around, if you could find it, where he mentions the things that he learned from Gamaliel, and they were also a part of his campaign and his organizing and his grassroots work back in late '06, '07, that led into his election in '08. So while many won't say it, I'll go ahead and say it. Gamaliel is a pivotal network that helped President Barack Obama become president of the United States back in 2008. In the midst of all of that, I'm a learner, and when I learn things, I immediately want to give it away as quickly as possible. And one of the things that I learned is that how do you take all of this community organizing work and take that organizing work and shift it into a ministry context? I am a full-time pastor. It is hard to do many other things when you are a full-time pastor. You got staff, you got budget, you got all of these other things to worry about. But I took the time to learn this and this community organizing aspect, and I wanted to figure out an approach on how I take these community organizing tools and tips and tricks for the trade. How do I take these things and merge this into the church, into ministry? And subsequently, it led to the marketplace, which was not my intent. It's just kind of what happened. So what I have now called patio to porch, and I was able to teach this as a class at Memphis Theological Seminary. And what it really is a relational theology framework that moves community organizing into leadership practices for theological educators, ministry leaders, and boardroom executives. So I want to go through some of this to the best of my ability. And please, if you have a question, please just raise your hand. Don't hesitate to ask, because I am one that believes that we all learn from each other. And if we are not asking the questions that are top of mind, then we won't really get the answers that we're looking for. So this will break down into three parts. The first part being the relational contrast that we all live in right now. One of the best relational experts that I feel like that we all learn from, if you believe and love the Bible, that I read and teach and preach from. One of the best relational leaders that we will ever see is a man named Jesus Christ. He is the greatest relational leader we have ever seen. During that time, there was this imperial paradigm that was reigning over the region, and they led with a top-down coercion, hierarchy, sort of gatekeeping narrative that they led with. This was not really a people-led movement. It was a movement led from the top down. It was in a sense of whatever I say goes. And we all live in these united or disunited states. So we kind of get an idea what that looks like here and now. But what threw a monkey wrench into the plans was that Jesus came with this paradigm shift, this relational thing where he disrupted leadership models. He didn't care about what was in place, so to speak. And all of his influence literally led on relationship. It led from one person telling another person to that person telling two more people. And then next thing you know, it spreads throughout the region. And it's all really based on presence. It is based on proximity. And it is based on moral credibility being very important there. One of the things that I have to figure out what I'm going to do with this because when I was writing my doctoral project, I have an entire chapter two that has never seen the light of day because it didn't necessarily fit. After my mentor looked at it, he says, "No, keep it. Just use it for something else because it doesn't fit here." And that relational model that I utilized then was on John chapter 4. If you ask me, is one of the greatest stories ever told. There are four pivotal words that were used that changed an entire region and led an entire people. If you recall John chapter 4, there was a woman at the well. She came to the well at the off hour because everybody went in the morning when the sun was not up and it wasn't super hot, but because she was cast out from her community, so to speak, quote unquote, she ends up going at an off hour and has this chance encounter with Jesus at the well. She has this encounter with Jesus. He tells her everything about her that he already knows, and she is just shocked. She does not know what to do. And she goes back and says what I call four of the most pivotal words in the Bible. She hears all of this, goes back to her community that has thrown her out as an outcast, and she goes back to the community and says, "Come see a man. Come see a man." That's it. This lowly woman who sits on the outside of her community goes back and literally changes all of Samaria. Now, they didn't get it the first time around because as you see later in, I think it's Romans chapter 6, 7, no pun intended there, right around those chapters somewhere, they I believe it was Stephen that ends up going back and shares the gospel with them again, and then they take heed to it. They didn't really take heed to it in John chapter 4. They heard it, they stuck around and said, "Oh, let's kind of see what this is about." And they ended up getting the gospel reshared to them in the book of Romans. But Jesus does this through radical disruptive leadership because if you pay attention to what he did, they were not supposed to be in conversation with each other. As a matter of fact, to get where Jesus was going, he was supposed to go up the riverbank. But instead, they cut through the land because it was a quicker route. So that was relational disruptive leadership. He did not force her. He didn't say, "Go tell everybody what you've heard." She said, "No, this man just told me everything about my life and he don't even know me. So let me tell y'all to go see a man." And then his influence was literally about presence because he could have left, but he didn't, and he stayed. It was about being vulnerable because he had no idea what was going to happen to him being on that foreign land. It was about long term proximity, meaning that I want you to see me not just now, but I want you to see me for a long time. And then moral credibility. He was blameless. We all know that. But the situation that we run into a lot of times is that we run into a lot of people who claim power but don't have the moral credibility to hold it. I ain't gonna tell y'all where to go, but y'all already know who and what I'm talking about. So porch theology is something that has been birthed out of, this is a lot on one slide, but I want to say, I will go ahead and put that out there. I know it's a lot on one slide. I could have put it on 5 different slides, but we're here now. But porch theology, the reason why this really came about is because I was in my neighborhood. I believe when we moved here 4 years ago, it was our first Christmas here, and my wife makes these 5 flavor pound cakes. And we made many pound cakes and gave them to our neighbors. And it was at that moment I said, okay, we're going to develop a great relationship with our neighbors. Right now, the only relationship we have with our neighbors is hi and bye. And I had to figure that out. It bothered me because I grew up in a neighborhood in East Cleveland, Ohio, where everybody sat on the porch. Everybody played out on the front lawn. But now we live in a world where everybody plays on the patio. Everybody plays in the backyard. All of my grills are in the backyard. Our gazebo is in the backyard. When we go outside to the backyard. When I go in my house, I go in my house through the garage. The garage door opens, I drive in, it closes, I get out of the car. I never see my neighbors. So the idea of patio to porch is returning us from the patio back to the porch where everybody was able to be in conversation with one another. You knew the folks down the street. The folks down the street knew you. If you left school and you walked past Mr. So and so's house and you didn't speak, that word was going to beat you home before you got there. Nowadays, we have no idea what that looks like. So, under this idea of porch theology, there are 5 that interdependent pillars that kind of hold this up. One of the main ones, one of the 5, is sacred dialogue in common spaces. We utilize the porch as just a threshold between private and public life. It's where people gather information, where people speak honestly, where they laugh, where we collect stories. And it draws from this power and this space where conversations about God are not sermons, but they are stories. I don't know what your neighborhoods were like, but I'm just going to really speak about mine growing up. Is on the porch is where we play cards. Folks would bring TVs outside on the porch and we would play video games. It's where all of the arguments happen, but it's also where some of life's most important questions happen. Where you could sit down with Big Mama or Big Daddy, or you could sit down with your parents, or you could sit down and listen to conversations and ask questions that you would not normally be able to ask in the church. Primarily because people don't come to Bible study like they used to. Sunday school has become archaic in most places. So we don't have many opportunities to ask these deep theological questions that we all have. And I mean, I tell my church all the time, if you really want to learn, if you really want to get to know me, if you really want to get to know this Bible that we all teach and preach and try our best to live from, one of the best places you can be is in Bible study. Because in Bible study, I will stop and ask questions. You raise your hand on Sunday morning, I'm going to think you got the Holy Ghost. You raise your hand in Bible study, we can stop, we can converse, we can dialogue, we can all learn from each other. That's kind of what happens during Bible study. So it's this sacred dialogue that's in a common space. The other part is this intergenerational exchange. Now, I am going to be 100% totally honest. This is one of the hardest pillars to break through. In my doctoral project, I wrote extensively about what's called reverse mentorship. I had to figure this out through my mother. My mother has gone home to be with the Lord. She left us in November of last year. But there were moments where I bought her an iPhone. Y'all, my mother passed away at 85, going on 86 years old. And I bought her an iPhone. And I bought her the iPhone because she lived in Cleveland and I lived in Memphis. And I wanted to see my mother. I could hear you, but I wanted to see you. Do you know that was one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do, is to teach her how to use an iPhone from a distance. So it got to the point where I started mentoring her on technology, how to use your Netflix account, how to use your Roku account. You don't just change channels anymore or turn the dial on the on the television. You have to actually utilize these streaming systems and platforms if you want to watch television. And so I was able to teach her things. She was able to teach me things. We are separated. My mama was bad, y'all. She had me at 45 going on 46. That was her age when she had me. So when I grew up, there were a lot of people that thought that my mother was my grandmother, but it gave me an innate ability to speak to a different generation because that generation, that older generation, wasn't just my mother, it was all of her friends that are in the church and are in many of our churches right now. So I had the ability to speak to my generation. I'm 41 now, but I have the ability to speak to my generation, but I know how to talk to the older generation. I know how not to throw the baby out with the bathwater when it comes down to some of our traditions. So it started to marry, and we had this intergenerational exchange where I could listen to my grandmother when I was younger. I could listen to my mother and my uncles, but I could also listen to children and their dreams. And I had to learn how to utilize these voices and honor these voices as voices of what I would consider to be divine truths because I could hear older, I could hear younger, and I knew how to marry the two. And I knew while I still walk into my church now, I think our oldest member is 98, 98. I'm 41. She still looks at me and respects me as her pastor, but I still look at her and respect her as somebody that could have been my grandmother. But we learn how to have those intergenerational relationships. And I challenge pastors with this all the time because it used to be a hot button thing when pastors said, "Oh, I got a multi-generational church." That is great that you have multiple generations, but are they intergenerational? Are those generations working together to develop relational and leadership pipelines so that when that person dies, the ministry does not stop? There is theological proximity over abstraction. Unlike academic theology, systematic and the likes, Porsche theology does not begin with doctrinal foundations, it begins with questions. Why do bad things have to happen to good people? When I graduated high school, one of our biggest reality checks was at our senior luncheon. And our senior advisor looked at us and told us to look around. Everybody was having fun. We were laughing and joking. We were eating food. And she paused us and told us to look around. And she told us this would be the last time all of you are ever in the same room again. And we didn't really think about it. We just laughed and waited a few minutes. Then it dawned on us some people were going off to the army or to the military, I should say. Some people were going to college in different states. And ever since, I think it was 10 years in a row, almost 10 years in a row, I lost a classmate due to gun violence. And ever since then, everything that she said kind of rang true. It begins with questions that are not irrelevant, but they are sacred because that's what turns the porch into the seminary of the streets. We know how to get out and have conversations and have dialogue and to share our testimonies because once you are able to look at what's happening in proximity, this is what happens when pastors come out of the pulpit and sit on the pew. After church, I have some of my robust conversations. We sit there on the pew, we laugh, we talk, we joke. You know, I'm sweaty. I done sweated through my suit, but I know that at that point is where everything becomes communal. It's where we don't just see God in the clouds, but we see the act of God moving through our pews. We see him moving through our conversations. And this communal movement is where we don't just see that, but the communal part is what helps people survive through economic abandonment, through racial terror, through cultural erosion. We miss, and generations behind me miss so many of this because we get all of our conversations and all of our information from telephones. We get it from these things. We don't have the art of just passing down information through the family griot that just knows everybody and knows everything, and then we get information passed down to us. Some of the greatest lessons and some of the greatest modes of leadership now rest in cemeteries because it did not get passed down. We say it all, well, we used to say it in seminary at Colgate Rochester. Some of the greatest books have never been written are resting in cemeteries right now because nobody wrote it. We don't know how to pass it. It's not that we don't know how to pass it down, we just don't pass it down. And so now we get generations that are lost and repeating the cycles that other generations have already been through. When if somebody would have just told somebody, and then somebody told somebody else, and then somebody passed it down, things would have changed, and maybe we would be looking at some things a little bit different now. There's no reason why we have to fight for Voting Rights Act the same way that they did in the 60s. It's 2026. We're fighting for the same things that they fought for. I wish we would have just done better at passing it down. Although a lot of it did, some of it missed some people. And then number 5, there's the theology of presence. There's nothing else that I believe means more than actually being present, than actually sitting down and talking to people. Dr. Harrington, Dr. Lumpkin, I don't know if you all still do it. Any other pastors on here, I don't know if you still do it. But I actually do pastoral visitations. I actually go and sit in homes where I'm invited. And I go and sit by hospital beds and just talk. And what I've learned about people is that if you give them an open-ended question, you will learn a lot about them. You'll learn a lot about your church too. You'll learn a lot about the community. I learned so much about Hampton just by walking around the city and having conversations. I learned so many things about my predecessor who's the lure of him just still rings loud throughout the city whenever I say his name, or whenever I say the church's name. People still affiliate the church with him, although he's been dead 11 years now. They still affiliate the church with him. And I learned so much about what my church was like, what happened in the community, what things were he a part of, what things were the church a part of. And then I hear those things and I come back and ask somebody at the church, what was it like having a feeding ministry for almost 20 years? Where you fed the community every Tuesday, no matter where you came from, no matter what your life circumstance was. And then in the middle of that feeding process, there was a small Bible study. And that's how the church grew. There is something about just being present, showing up, sitting still, holding space, and staying long enough to make sure that the conversation that you're actually having matters. So many people want to just get in, get out. And we'll be able to say, oh, I went to go visit brother so-and-so or sister so-and-so. And you only stayed 2-3 minutes, just long enough to say hi, say a prayer, and leave. Now, I understand it. I also did clinical pastoral education at the Department of Veteran Affairs in Salisbury, North Carolina. And those veterans got a way of showing you when they want you to get out their room. And I learned how to pick up on that. When they want you to go, you go ahead and go. You don't stay too long, but you don't stay too short either. You stay long enough just to make sure that your impact matters. One of those things that happens in this idea of porch theology is what I call a posture to surrender to build relationships for collective impact. The moment that you move self out of the way, the moment that you remove not the Reverend Doctor or not the Esquire, but the moment that you move Nicole or Elijah or Daryl, the moment that you move you out the way, you can then say, okay, I don't know what I'm going in this room and I'm about to see, but God, whatever it is your will for my life, let that be done. Because when you're building relationships for impact, true authority does not, it flows from our submission and not our status. One of my good friends in the city, Reverend E. Allen Redwell, posted something on social media a few days ago, and he said, "When you introduce yourself, how do you introduce yourself?" It was specifically about pastors and preachers, and I simply said, "Hi, I'm Marco." That's it. My credentials are there, but you don't have to lead with your status. You don't have to lead with your credentials. You don't have to say, hi, I'm Dr. Lumpkin, and I'm from an upper middle class family. Who cares? Who are you? Once you lead with that, I believe that that begins to break down some walls, especially with clergy persons. One of the things that there's a battle in some organizing spaces where clergy and community activists and organizers don't get along. They clash all the time because activists see clergy as one thing and clergy see activists as another thing. So when I show up to a rally or I show up somewhere, I usually don't go. I'm not sporting my collar. I don't have on our Early Grove polo shirt. I don't have on any of those things. I just show up as myself. Hi, I'm Marco. If you find out that I'm a pastor of the conversation leads there, then that's another thing. Then, that's fine. But we're in an era right now where so many people are hyper focused on self promotion and instead of sustainable leadership that is anchored in something other than yourself. Everybody wants to be the next content creator. Everybody wants to be the next big name. Do you know how many names actually moved through the civil rights movement that are not Bayard Rustin or Martin Luther King Jr. or Samuel Billy Kyles or any of the John Lewis? Do you know how many other names actually took part in the civil rights movement? It was because people like King and Rustin and Jackson and Lewis and Abernathy and Young and Kyles, they all recognized that they cannot do anything in a silo. You cannot do this in a silo. You have to build intentional relationships. You have to develop non-negotiable rhythms about spiritual discernment because everybody that's not praying with you is not praying with you. There are some people that you are holding their hand, you're linked arm in arm, and you're praying with them while they're praying on you. They want to be next to you for the photo op. They're not really next to you to do the work. There's a sense of holy stillness that has to take place because outside of these walls, it's nothing but chaos waiting for us. Outside of your home, outside of the four walls of your church, there's chaos out there. But the moment that you bring in that strict accountability for yourself, you'll then be able to navigate some of the complex initiatives that are going to come your way. I have a 17-year-old daughter that's headed to college this year. Y'all pray for me. She's headed to college, and one of the things that when we get into our back and forths, because I didn't really have back and forths with my mother. It was kind of like a you do as I say kind of thing. And now I'm trying to learn how to let my daughter have some autonomy because she's getting ready to be 18 next month and she's going off to college and all of these things. And she said something to me that I went and I talked with my therapist about. I'm a believer that believes in Jesus and therapy. And I went to go talk with my therapist and I was expressing my frustration, and my daughter told me to go touch grass. And I said, go touch grass. What do you? I thought it was that. Are you being disrespectful? Like, what does this mean? Like, I had to go and Google. I'm good for doing Google on my phone when I don't learn, when I don't know words. When I moved to Memphis, I learned a new word called junt, Junt, and I learned another word called flogging. These were words that were not in my vocabulary at all. I had to go to Google and figure it out. And what she really meant was go outside and get grounded. And then I started this practice where in the morning, sometimes the sun shines in the back of my house. Sometimes I would take a blanket and just lay it outside, and I would put on a t-shirt and some shorts, and then I would just go lay down in the grass. Um, and just let the sun, kind of give me the energy, give me life. And I would do that in the mornings before I had my coffee and before I got started with the day. But that's something that we have to do, that stillness, because when we pick up these phones, there's drama waiting for us. It's waiting for us. As soon as you pick up the phone, that's what you go see. You go open social media, you go open your text message, you go open your emails, you go do all of that before you've had a real minute to really commune with God. So now that I know this is not a sign of disrespect, I would challenge all of us to go touch grass. Go touch grass. Take off your socks and shoes and go walk barefoot in the lawn. I don't know what it does. It just, I don't know. You connect with energy or something. I don't know all of the. You know better than me, Nicole Roberson. I don't know. All I know is it does something. Um, but nevertheless, um, pillar two, the power of community, unlocking people and assets. One of the things that I had to learn, specifically as a pastor, is learning not just resource assets, meaning money, land, property, equipment, so on and so forth. I really had to learn and normalize people being assets, human resources, um, not in the HR sense that we think of. And I'll tell you how I figured this out. I was going to go play in a golf tournament in Tunica, Mississippi. And it was a Penny Hardaway and Memphis District Baptist Association golf tournament. And I was sitting down in my office and I told one of our deacons that, hey, this Saturday, I'll be offline a little bit because I'm going to go play in a golf tournament. I went and told him who the golf tournament, where it was and what it was about and so on and so forth. And when I said Penny, his eyes lit up when I said Penny Hardaway, and I couldn't figure out why. And I went to go talk to one of our older deacons, Deacon Roger, and he said, "Oh," he said, "you should tell him that you're the pastor of Early Grove." And I said, "Okay, sure, I'll tell him." It was my first time ever meeting Penny. Walked up to him, and before I got to him, he pointed his finger at me and he said, "You're the pastor at Early Grove." Well, mind you, I had only been in the city about 4 or 5 months at this moment. And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I was baptized at Early Grove." I said, "What? Really?" And then he said, "Oh, yeah, me and, Elliot and some other guys." And I said, "Okay, fine." I didn't know who Elliot was at the time. So we had this conversation. I said, "Wait a minute now. Okay." I had no idea we had ties like that. Penny has popped up at the church a couple times just randomly. When I see him, it's all love. We were just together last week, Thursday, I think, at a meeting that they were having at the athletics facility, unlocking assets. When I started to put this together, I had a conversation with the same deacon. I said, "Oh, I met Penny. He told me that, there was a bunch of people here and he was baptized here." And he said the name Elliot. He kept talking about Elliot. He said, "Who is Elliot?" We have a gym at our church. He walked me over to the Family Life Center. There's a huge placard when you walk in the gym. And it said that this Family Life Center gymnasium was a gift from Elliot Perry, former NBA basketball player, now minority owner of the Memphis Grizzlies. Like, wait a minute, y'all all used to be members of this church? Where y'all go? Come back. uh, But I learned in that moment that in the idea of just sitting down and having conversation with people, when you do that, you're actually unlocking a lot of assets that you can really take advantage of. And leadership that is formed in relationship, it is never in isolation. And the porch symbolizes this highly relational liminal space where deep connection and transaction free dialogue happens. I put a lot of emphasis on transaction free because we have so many transactional relationships that we don't focus on the actual real relationships that we do have. Everything seems, and I shouldn't say everything, I'm trying not to speak in absolutes so much, but there are so many relationships that we have that are all transactional. You want to come visit my church, not because I'm Marco McNeil, but because I am in the church where Penny Hardaway was baptized at. You want to be close to me because Dr. Lumpkin, I see the Howard University steeple in the background. You want to be close to me because my uncle, my pastor, is now the D-Min director of Howard Divinity School. I almost called you Dr. Roberson. Um, you want to be close to me because my pastor, my uncle, and Dr. Frank Thomas are like this. And we'll be at Mixed Methods later on this year. Little plug there, shameless plug. Um, but people want to be connected to some people just so that they can have the ability to connect to some people that they were connected to, not because they want to be in genuine relationship with you. Now, I will admit that is a hard pill for some people to swallow, but it is also the truth. There are some people that don't want to be close to you because of you are Nicole. They want to be close to you because you're at CTS and you can get me in that PhD program. That is hard to get into for some people. They want to be close to you, Daryl, because you over at New Sardis. And we know that y'all rub elbows with the elites of the city. They want that. There are some people that don't want to be in genuine relationship. But I will honestly say when you move from committees to move from committees to these covenantal teams, it requires a couple of things. It requires intentional listening. It requires vulnerability. It requires finding deep mutual trust over shared values. In organizing, we call these one-on-ones. In one-on-ones, you get an opportunity to really learn about a person. If you are really skilled in them, you know how to ask the open-ended questions, and you can kind of listen for some things and realize if you and this person have any sort of shared values anywhere. Nicole, I can tell you, you and I have a shared value already. I've been going to therapy for 4 years now. When I started pastoring, is when I realized I needed to be going to therapy regularly. I started with going, it was so bad, I was going once a week. And then I started going once every other week. And then I told my therapist, a little older white lady, I started telling her, okay, I think I'm ready to move monthly now. And then she said, okay, so I'll see you in a couple weeks. And I was just like, oh, okay, we're not there yet. I thought we was there. We're not good. And then sure enough, I revert back and start going weekly. Shared value. Dr. Lumpkin, I'm assuming you're an alumnus of Howard University, the Mecca. There's a shared HBCU value there because I went to Virginia University. Dr. Harrington, We pastor in Memphis. Memphis is a peculiar place. I am from Cleveland, Ohio, and spent 13 years in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is one of the most diverse places in America, the second largest banking district next to New York City. It's people from all over the world in Charlotte. And then I come to Blackety Black Memphis, where my friend and brother, the Reverend Dr. Earl Fisher, says he pastors the blackest church in all of Memphis and Shelby County. I learned a new level of Black excellence when I got to Memphis. You see that very quickly, shared values. That's what we all have to find. There is a mutual connectedness with all of us somewhere, some way. And if you sit down and just talk long enough, you'll figure that out. But also, when you sit down and talk to congregants, when you sit down and talk to community members, when you sit down, and I don't care who it is, when you sit down and talk to children, you will find out that there is a shared value somewhere. There is some connection somewhere. You just have to find it. The mayor of Memphis, Mr. Paul Young, Mayor Paul Young, we have shared value because our children attend the same school. So when I see him and I see his wife, we don't just look at each other as Mayor Paul Young or Dr. Marco McNeil. It's what's up, Paul? Because in this space, we ain't that. We parents here. We both got titles, but we parents here right now because we have a shared value. Now, in all of that framework, from porch theology to developing community and unlocking people assets and to building relationships, all of that, y'all, is not for nothing. It is for something. What is the something? This is what we miss a lot of times. It is for multiplication and mentorship. My wife is currently working on her dissertation at the University of Memphis right now, and she is in a section where she's writing about mentorship and sponsorship amongst Black women in higher education administration. My wife has a master's in higher education administration from Georgia Southern, and she got into higher education spaces and realized that's not enough. And then she decided to go get a master's in business administration from North Carolina A&T State University. And she realized, okay, I think we're on to something. But then she kept bumping up against the ceiling where she couldn't figure out how to break through this glass. And then she started working on her EDD at the University of Memphis and found out, no, it's not just a glass ceiling, but it's a ceiling because there is a lack of relationship, there's a lack of mentorship, there's a lack of sponsorship, meaning that is there somebody who's going to speak well of Daryl Harrington when Daryl Harrington is not in the room? Are they going to carry you on so that not so that I can look down with you, but so that I can pull you up and we can look next to each other? But the more disheartening part that she's realized is that there's this thing, y'all. Listen, I'm a learner. I think I led with that. I never stop learning. I'm always listening. And there is this thing that she learned about called the queen bee phenomenon. And I said, well, that just sounds interesting on the surface. What is the queen bee phenomenon? It's the notion that most, not all, most Black women said, I got here, you better get here the best way you can. And I don't really want you to get here because I want to be the queen bee. It's only one of me, and it's only go be one of me. And I'm gonna make sure that there are no more other me's so that I can sit in these boardrooms with a whole bunch of faces that don't look like me. That's the queen bee phenomenon. But it's not just there. It resides in generational ministry context. It survives in ministry context. It survives in the ministries in your church. You want to know why some ministries die when people die? It's because they had a fear of displacement. What happens to me if I train somebody 20 years my junior? Oh, y'all just go push me out. Y'all gonna not want to hear my ideas. Y'all gonna want those younger ideas. It creates tension and a fear of displacement of what will happen to me next. But when you decide that you are not bigger than the program, training somebody else would be a whole lot easier. Early Grove has been around 124 years. Early Grove has been through 18 pastors in 124 years. Whenever I retire, guess what? Early Grove is going to keep running, regardless if I'm here or not. If the Lord see fit to take any of us right now, the organizations will mourn. They will put black sheets over our chairs. And in a few months, they go form a search committee and they go look for your replacement and they go have an installation and they go celebrate. They go thank God for what was, but they want to thank God for what is and what is to come. Don't be foolish enough to think that it's going to rest with just you. I told my son is 11 years old. He's my only begotten son. I got two other girls, but he's my only begotten. And I tell him all the time that in most cases, I am the only man that you're going to meet that wants you to do better than what he did. Because everywhere else, it's going to be a competition. Everywhere else, people will not readily give you information. When I go along to places like when I met up with Penny Hardaway last week, I took my son because I want you to be able to see that you need to have these connections too. Daddy ain't out here just having all these meetings and developing all of these connections for no reason. It's so that I want to make sure that you could benefit from something that daddy is out here doing. That my daughter, if she decides she wants to go get a PhD from CTS, I can tell her, hey, I know a few people that you need to go and talk to before you submit your application because I want you to make sure that this is what you really want to do. Because PhD work, academic work, period, is about a test of the will. How bad do you want it? That's what mentorship provides. That's what we don't tell other generations. That's where that intergenerational exchange gets cloudy because I don't want nobody to take my space. If you felt like you could have done better than me, then they should have elected you when you applied. We have to shift from this idea of transactional maintenance to intentional reproduction. Who is Daryl Harrington mentoring? Who is Milo Lumpkin mentoring? Who's going to come from behind you and say, when they fall, I'm going to pick up the mantle so that we don't miss a beat, so that churches won't have to go too long in a pastoral search process? Who is going to pick up the mantle? Who's going to hand off this vital organization and responsibilities to somebody that's capable and somebody that is relationally aligned to what the mission of the organization is? While in Charlotte, y'all, I had decided I was done with the church. I was working for a church that had 5,000 members. I was a staff minister. I was the CDC executive director. We had brought in money. We built $18 million of affordable housing. We was doing the thing. But I got to a point where I said, you know what? I'm done with the church. The moment I have an unnatural ministry story, because when I was called into ministry, I went to go talk with my pastor. He made me wait 4 months before I preached what was a trial sermon, not an initial sermon. I preached a trial sermon. So when I preached my trial sermon and the church gave their vote of affirmation to license me, I walked into full-time ministry the next week. For 16 years, all I've ever known is full-time ministry. That's it. But when I got to that moment where I said that I was done with the church, I decided I was going to take all my talents and skills, because I went to Virginia Union. If you come out of Virginia Union and you can't preach, then you's a slippery worm. So I knew how to communicate with people. And so what I decided to do was I was going to take my talents to Foundations of the Carolinas, one of the largest philanthropic firms in the country. I said, I'm gonna go there and I'm gonna go do that. Foundations is so large that they manage the Duke Endowment. If you know anything about the Duke Endowment, it's a couple of $1 billion strong. And so I decided that I was going to go there. And while I was there, I was working for a lady named Holly Welch Stubbings. And I would always see her around. She would always be moving around and talking with everybody, but she took a liking to one person. And they met every Friday for lunch. Holly decided that she was going to leave Foundation, and I believe she is now the CEO at another philanthropic firm in Philadelphia. But that person that she sat down and had lunch with every Friday, that's who's now running and VP at Foundations for the Carolinas. What I looked at was just a regular lunch meeting, was actually lunch and a mentoring session that was happening. And she was able to hand off vital information so that the organization would not fall if she left. This is one reason why I love succession planning in churches, because the biggest fight happens when it's time to look for a new pastor. There are two major fights, especially in a Black Baptist church. I can't speak for any other denomination, but it's two meetings that folks go show up to. It's not the church business meeting. It's the meeting to get rid of a pastor and the meeting to elect a pastor. Them the two meetings that they go show up to. But what would it look like if that meeting was to decide who's going to walk alongside the pastor, so that when the pastor retires, if the pastor is blessed enough to retire at 65, 70 years old, that we don't miss a beat, that we keep on going. Because when there is no leadership is when people scatter. So we got to transition these operations from doing tasks for others to developing strategic leadership with others. Because the first thing that happens is that the systems will begin to fight against you. But if you create resilient systems, you already know that your core is tight. There's one thing, there's many things that I learned, but there's a church in Charlotte, North Carolina. Many of you may know it. It's called the Park Church. Bishop Claude Richard Alexander Jr., former president of the Hamptons Ministers Conference. Bishop Alexander is just a do-it-all. He's a catch-all. But they rebranded right when I got to Charlotte and switched from University Park Baptist Church, where they had to move through 3 locations because they kept growing, and then they just became the Park. And now if you know anything about Charlotte, if you see that purple P anywhere, you know it's the Park. You don't have to second guess it, you already know who it is. But what happened was I got very close with his assistant, Dr. Catherine Mahoney. Everything about their internal structure still says University Park Baptist Church. The core system was impenetrable. You couldn't get through it. Everybody knows the park, but there are a few people that know University Park Baptist Church. Because once those systems got developed and structured, you didn't worry about what was happening around it. You realized that everything around it was fluctuating. But that center was going to be strong and it was going to be together. So no matter what happened, it was always going to be together. And then that shows the test and the measure of true legacy. Refining metric systems to evaluate organizational health, not by individual performance or short-term acclaim, because we all love to wave our flag for short-term stuff. But what happens when we wave a flag for leadership pipelines that are getting generated? What happens when you implement a system like I've done at Early Grove, that if you are the president of an auxiliary ministry of the church, the person who is the VP or the assistant director has to be at least 10 to 15, 20 years at better your junior. It's a necessity at this point. Because if something happens to you, or if something happens to somebody else, we need to see fit that all of the things that you have learned does not die when you die. We have to measure our success. Milo, I know that you've heard it before, but I don't know if anybody else has, so I'll say it. In the Gamaliel Network, we always say anything worth doing is worth evaluating. I can tell you now, my church hates evaluation period. Anytime we do something, we have Vacation Bible School in June. That was a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Next Tuesday is evaluation time. All the directors, all of the teachers, we all need to sit down. We need to discuss what went well, what didn't, what do we need to adjust, what do we need to fix. And the one question that they don't like, do we need to do this again? I know ministries love their annual days, but Lord have mercy. Do we need to have an annual day for everybody? Do we need to eat after service for everybody? No, we don't. We can lump some of these together. We can have a ministry's annual day that ends with a ministry fair so that no members can know exactly what ministries they want to be a part of, that they feel called to, led to, or have the spiritual gifts for. That's leadership pipeline. Because now that I've taken my hands off of it, oh, it runs on its own. I don't have to do anything, say anything. I ain't got to fight about nothing no more. But it's all about a relational strategy. Jesus's relational strategy was an invitation to relationship. He didn't initiate that movement with flowcharts, with policy documentation, with traditional dogma curriculum. His foundation was summoned by just two words, a personal invitation that said, "Follow me." All of that led to the proximity that preceded all of the program engagement and understanding. They weren't ready for programs. If they were, they would have been ready for all of them people that was sitting on the side when the little boy came up with two pieces of fish and 5 loaves of bread, and then he turned around and fed, we need to get the number correct, around 15,000 people, because they only counted 5,000 because that didn't include women and children. But we need to throw women and children into that number. So they fed about 15,000 people. That was no program that they had figured out. That was all through relationship. It was all through proximity and alignment. Influence forged over years, shared meals, shared time together, continual conversation. All of that is a deliberate relational approach that builds trust, it builds resilience, and it will withstand crisis. Because in most churches, in most organizations, once crisis hit, People run. They want to get away from it as quick as possible. And then you got to go out and spend money and hire a crisis management firm and do all of the kind of things that most people don't want to do. You got to go do all of that when you don't really want to. But if you build intentional relationships and systems, one of the best one of the best relevant topics that I could use about this right now is Father Michael Flager in Chicago. There was some report that's now come out from somebody, I think 30 years ago, that said Father Flager had abused them. Now, while he has dealt with these types of accusations all along, Saint Sabina said, we ain't going nowhere. And he ain't going nowhere. We don't care what the diocese got to say because we know him. We know him as a person of high moral character and moral value. This is not to say that everybody runs that way, because there are some people that have done some wrong things. But their core system, because of the shared value, the immense trust, the relational capabilities, they're able to sustain severe crisis in a crisis moment without having to run to somebody else. They handled it in-house. The Catholic Church should really be taking some information from them versus them taking some information from the Catholic Church. So, the path for relationship formation. You can't do anything without being in proximity with somebody else. You got to build high trust, and you do that through presence, again, shared meals, observation. There's nothing like sitting down with somebody over a 3-piece, spicy white, red beans and rice, with an extra biscuit on the side with some honey and a Pepsi. You want to build a relationship with me? That's the key to my heart right there. You got to do that through participation, understanding that transition flows from observation and hands-on learning. My son works, he's 11, but he works with the engineering program at the University of Memphis because he loves all things train, all things civil engineering, and he knows more about cars than I do. I'm 41, he's 11, but he learns because he's hands-on with the engineering department at the University of Memphis. A lot of the people that we're bringing up needs to be hands-on. It needs to be things that are low stake, meaning that if they mess up, they're not damaging relationships. This is one of the reasons why I love field education. This is one of the reasons why I love summer internships with younger generations. Low stake. They ain't got to put too much into it. Hold their hand as they go along with it. This is one of the things that I love about the church that I grew up in Charlotte. My pastor, Dr. Peter Weary, when we had Bible study, we had a family meal at 5:30. Family meal went from 5:30 to 6:30. We had prayer service from 6:30 to 6:45. Then you had a 15-minute sermon that was done by the associate ministers. We were on rotation. It was a low ask. All you had to do was come in, do your sermon in 15 minutes. Because if you can't say it in 10, you can't say it in 30. You had 15 minutes. And there we would work on systems the sweet science of preaching, the Hegelian Proctor dialectical method of preaching. We would learn more about other mixed methods of preaching in those moments. So that way, when we get to the Mixed Methods Conference, I believe in October, everything went flying over our heads. We got our toe in a little bit. We understood a little bit. But then there's another portion of correcting this coaching. It's a delivery system that is based on high trust because everybody that's in your circle can correct you. I cannot remember who said it. I believe it was John Henry Clark. I believe he was the originator of the quote. I might be wrong. Don't quote me on that. But he said, I only debate my equals, to all others I teach. I said, wait a minute. Now listen, I learned that very young, so I couldn't say that to everybody. But to my equals, I'm not debating you, I'm teaching you. Who's your mentor? And then who are you mentoring? because that person that's mentoring you, there is only a certain number of people I will accept correction from. Why? Because we got that relationship. That relationship is key. And then there's delegation, the releasing of absolute ownership so that you can then multiply agency, sustaining the mission for long-term growth and development. That's the pathway of relational formation. That's how it should go. Or that's how one of the ways how it can go. Proximity, participation, leading to correction so that when you actually move to delegation, people are not messing up with the things that are already in place. And then there's the flow of leadership formation. Out of each pillar that we, oh, let's say it close in 60 seconds. All right, y'all take a picture of that. There's surrender, there is community, and then there is multiplication. Surrender yourself, surrender your ego. Are you being led by God? Community, who are you walking with? Multiplication, who are you developing? I would have led for some questions right here with formation, reflection, and dialogue, but we don't have time for that. So, hey, I enjoy y'all. Thank you for allowing me to do this. I hope that you're able to take something from it. And hopefully this won't be the last time we see each other.